She didn't. For you that are getting over anxious about me dying, out of concern and some out of anxiousness, hoping it'll happen, I've run a high blood pressure since I was. It used to be a hell of a lot higher than that. Marston can tell you when it was one night when, how long was that? 11 years ago when I went into shock. I'm still here, honey. My brain ain't damaged. I got my eye on your ass. But that was a hell of a thing to tell him. He don't know the context. Anybody that's in Operation Zero like I am, I want to make preparations. Some people take glory that their movement would die when they do. They don't have no goddamn concern except their ego. All I'm concerned about is principle. I want this thing to continue.
Okay. This is where there's no name in here, but this is part of that Adobe PDF where I took it out of an Adobe PDF, put it into here, and see it's going to show 12 here, but that's okay. But I'm going to go right here to look at this. See that 12? Now watch this though. It won't show it there, which I find interesting, but it will inside the parentheses. 34.5. So I was wrong on the 27. So that's what it actually came out to. So if you take 34.5 minus 12 equals 22.5 is the difference, but it could be at 34.5 as well, the font. So those zeros can be, let's see if I can insert a shape here and show you what I mean about the zeros and the way they manipulate them. And remember, Indiana has got something on the books to change pi, right? And to give it as a gift, and this goes in line. Let's insert a shape. Let's do an oval. Which is not really an oval, is it? Huh. I guess that'd be that one where they're manipulating shapes based on points, like the star, the circle and the star thing that Boris has going on. So, because that's a circle, or there's a square inside of a circle, or a circle inside of a square with a star. If you take all those points and fold them inwards, it makes a circle. That's not quite an oval. That's a circle inside a square, right? This is part of their... That's funny. Anyway, you get the gist of it. What we can look at is the... Oh, so you can edit points. And that's what I'm talking about on the typeset. So you can basically bend the stars. Let's see if they got a star shape I can put in there. There's a snowflake. There's a moon. There's the sun. There's a star. Edit wrap points. Edit points. I wonder if you, I bet they're bending the stars in their type site. And that's what the old Masons used to do with their hidden text. Close enough for me. Well, let me get a little bit better. Yeah. Anyway. So, a pie bill. Remember, imagine that I was telling you about this, and SM, I was telling you about this. The Indiana pie bill. This dude, this Edward Goodwin, gave this to Indiana as a gift in the educational communities. And I have studied at a few universities here, and they do still do this. So he basically changed it to 3.2. And it's a form of squaring the circle, because they're saying it can't be done according to this Ferdinand von Lindman. They can't change pi. So this guy named Waldo came in after the General Assembly voted it in to establish a mathematical truth, therefore making it law by legislative fiat. And that's what's operating in the Indiana shadow docket system, because I caught them with these various statutes using that under the term of art, is what they said, the attorneys. So the term of art would be an artwork, and these universities, which our former governor is now over Purdue University, and I have more on the universities and their involvement. Despite its name, the main result claimed by the bill is its method to square the circle rather than establish a certain value for a mathematical constant, the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. However, the bill, which would basically square the circle. However, the bill does imply various incorrect values, such as 3.2. The bill never became law due to the intervention of Professor C.A. Waldo. Where is Waldo, right? Of Purdue University, who happened to be present in the legislature on that day it went up for a vote. The impossibility of squaring the circle using only compass and straight edge constructions. And let's look at that. And I know this is Wikipedia, but it's good enough for right now. And I don't mind it. There's a lot of collaboration that happens in this forum. Look at that baseball. Look at that soccer ball. Look at that globe, if you will. Look at the round earth, if you will. Look at the, let's look at this. This is pretty cool. I want to show you what I mean by that. That's a map taken off the globe. That's a football. So FIFA would be involved here, right? Which you guys probably already know that, but I'm just saying. I have to find these things out on my own. So compass and straight edge construction, also known as rulers and compass or classical construction. These are Freemason tools, right? Or symbolism. That's one of their cornerstones. So anyway, this dude named Waldo came and said, "Oh, you can't do that." In 1894, Indiana physician and amateur mathematician Edward J. Goodwin believed that he had discovered a correct way of squaring the circle. Usually if I hover over this, it'll show the site, but it's not going to. He proposed a bill to Indiana Representative Taylor Record, which Record introduced in the House under the long title, A Bill for an Act Introducing a New Mathematical Truth, and offered as a contribution to education to be used only by the state of Indiana, free of cost, by paying any royalties whatsoever on the same, provided it is accepted and adopted by the official action of the legislature of 1897. The text of the bill consists of a series of mathematical claims detailed below. So notice this. That's that logic I was telling you about. So they use the parentheses, and they don't have it in the developers, when they go in and do software like Python or Ruby are the name of some of the architects of the system and the developers, the programs that they use. So Python and Ruby would, in the search logic, not include the parentheses, brackets, syntax, basically, on the outside world, but they would internally. So it's followed by a recitation of Goodwin's previous accomplishments. His solutions to the trisection of the angle, doubling the cube, and quadrature of the circle, having been already accepted as contributions to science by the American Mathematical Monthly, and be it remembered that these noted problems had long since given up by scientific bodies as unsolvable mysteries and above man's ability to comprehend. Now, I'm going to get into here. I want to show you something. Imagine, and SM, when I was telling you about, I told you imagine about this. Inside these compasses, there's different combinations. So what you do is you put yourself right there where that little, right there. You put yourself in the middle of that compass. And you're looking up and looking out, and you create your own heaven. Because that is your universe. So when I'm talking about the way the Freemasons do this, and I know because I have, maybe I'm not sure, but the family has information, and we've always, my grandfather always hung out with me, talked to me, taught me music, musical instruments. I played the piano, and just from him raising his children and the way that they interacted with us. So he was a Freemason until he was well into his 80s, and then he decided to stop because he saw what was coming of his secret society that he was involved in, and some of the books that have been left around. So and there's a missing combination of numbers. And when I say the zeros in the text, I'll show you what I mean in a moment, because I'm going to get into that example that I've shown of the contracts. His solutions to the trisection of an angle, doubling the cube, quadrature of the circle. Goodwin's solutions were indeed published in the American Mathematical Monthly, though with a disclaimer of published by request of the author. Upon its introduction in the Indiana House of Representatives, the bill's language and topic occasioned confusion among the membership. A member from Bloomington proposed that it be referred to the Finance Committee. A member's recommendation to refer the bill to the Committee of Swamplands, where the bill could find a deserved grave, to the Committee on Education, which reported favorably. Following a motion to suspend the rules, the bill passed on February the 6th. Ooh, that's the anchor date on my daughter's thing. Without a dissenting vote. The news of the bill occasioned an alarmed response from Der Tägliche Telegraph, a German-language newspaper in Indianapolis, which reviewed the event with significantly less favor than its English-speaking competitors. As this debate concluded, Purdue University professor C.A. Waldo arrived in Indianapolis to secure the annual appropriation for the Indiana Academy of Science. An assemblyman handed him the bill, offering to introduce him to the genius who wrote it. He declined, saying that he has already met many crazy people as he cared to. Purdue University arrived in saying all the crazy people he cared to meet, right? When it reached the Indiana Senate, the bill was not treated so kindly, for Waldo had coached the senators previously. The committee to which it had been assigned reported it unfavorably, and the Senate tabled it on February the 12th. It was nearly passed, but opinion changed when one senator observed that the General Assembly lacked the power to define mathematical truth. Influencing some of the senators was a report that major newspapers such as the Chicago Tribune had begun to ridicule the situation. According to Indianapolis News article on February the 13th, They're playing swap off here on these anchor dates. The bill was brought up and made fun of. The senators made bad puns about it, ridiculed it, laughed over it. The fun lasted half an hour. Senator Hubble said that it was not meant for the Senate. It was not meat for the Senate, which was costing the state $250 a day to waste its time in such frivolity. He said that in reading the leading newspapers of Chicago and East, he found the Indiana state legislature had laid itself open to ridicule by the action already taken on the bill. He thought consideration of such a proposition was not dignified nor worthy of the Senate. He moved the indefinite postponement of the bill, and the motion carried. So it's still there. And this is the deal. Really, that Waldo reportedly came up and asked them about that, and it told them about it. He went in and told the folks about it. So they're leaving that out. Approximation of pi. Although the bill has become known as the pi bill, its text does not mention the name pi at all, and Goodwin appears to have thought that of the ratio between the circumference and diameter of a circle as distinctly secondary to his main aim of squaring the circle. So it's a zero, the symbol of a zero, and he was going to square the circle with those zeros. And as I told you, it comes out of a PDF format once you OCR it from 10 point font up into 27 point font automatically. Towards the end of section 2 appears the following passage. Furthermore, it is revealed that the ratio of the chord and arc of 90 degrees, which is a 7 to 8, and also the ratio of the diagonal and one side of the square, which is a 10 to 7, disclosing the fourth important fact that the ratio of the diameter and circumference is as 5/4 to 4. So here it is. And I really need to go get it from 1897, known as the Indiana Pi Bill. Towards the end of section 2, it says plainly that the ratio of the diameter and circumference is as 5/4 to 4, which means pi is 3.2. The section goes on to criticize ungenerously, I'd say, past values of pi as wholly wanting and misleading. Engrossed House Bill number 246, a bill for an act introducing a new mathematical truth and offered as a contribution to education to be used only by the state of Indiana free of cost by paying any royalties whatever on the same, provided it is accepted and adopted by the official action of the legislature of 1897. Be it enacted that by the General Assembly of the state of Indiana it has been found that a circular area is to a square the square on a line equal to the quadrant of the circumference as the area of an equilateral rectangle is to the square of on one side. The diameter employed as the linear unit according to the present rule in computing the circle's area is entirely wrong, as it represents the circle's area 1 1/5 times the area of a square whose perimeter is equal to the circumference of a square. This is because 1/5 of the diameter fails to be represented 4 times in the circle's circumference. For example, if we multiply the perimeter of a square by 1/4 of any line 1/5 greater than one side, we can, in like manner, make the square's area to appear 1/5 greater than the fact, as is done by taking the diameter for the linear unit instead of the quadrant of the circle's circumference. It is impossible to compute the area of a circle on the diameter as a linear unit without trespassing upon the area outside of the circle, to the extent of including 1/5 more area than is contained within the circle's circumference. Because the square on the diameter produces a side of a square, which equals 9, when the arc of 90 degrees equals 8, by taking the quadrant of the circle's circumference for the linear unit, we fulfill the requirements of both quadrature and rectification of the circle's circumference. Furthermore, it is revealed the ratio of the chord and arc of 90 degrees, which is as 7 to 8, and also the ratio of the diagonal on one side of the square, which is as 10 to 7, disclosing the fourth important fact, that the ratio of the diameter and circumference is as 5/4 to 4. And because of these facts and the further fact that the rule in present use fails to work both ways mathematically. It should be discarded as wholly wanting and misleading in its practical applications. Well, I'd say, now, if you take a dollar bill and they change it up, you get 4 quarters, right? You don't get 5 20-cent pieces, right? So they're doing something with the quarter dollar, which is not a quarter of a dollar. It says quarter dollar on the coin. And I haven't seen it done, but I talked to someone who said they went up and paid their taxes that way, and they paid them for every dollar. They paid a quarter, and the city accepted it because I think that's internally how they may do things. So that's just something I heard. That's hearsay, but it's important, I think. In this scenario, Section 3, it is further proof of the value of the author's proposed contribution to education and offered as a gift to the state of Indiana is the fact of his solutions of the trisection of the angle, duplication of the cube, and quadrature of the circle having been already accepted as contributions to science by the American Mathematical Monthly, the leading exponent of mathematical thought in this country. And be it remembered that these noted problems have been long since given up on by scientific bodies as insolvable mysteries and above man's ability to comprehend. Legislative history introduced in the House, read first time January 18, 1897, referred to Committee on Canals, reported and referred to Committee on Education, January 19, 1897, reported back February 2nd, 1897, read second time February 5th, 1897, order engrossed February 5th, 1897, read third time February 5th, 1897, passed February 5th, 1897, A67, noes 0, introduced by record in the Senate. Read first time and referred to Committee on Temperaments, February the 11th, reported favorably February the 12th. Read second time and indefinitely postponed February the 12th, 1897. What I'm saying is they're secretly using it. It's still sitting on the books. It wasn't canceled out. They can't cancel out a 0, can they? Because reportedly zeros have no value, but I'm saying internally they do. Let's go back. Goodwin's model circle, as described in Section 2 of the bill, it has a diameter of 10 and a stated circumference of 32, not 31.4159 infinitely. The chord of 90 degrees has length stated as 7, not 7.0710 infinitely. So, area of the circle, Goodwin's main goal was not to measure lengths in the circle, but to square it, which he interpreted literally as finding a square with the same area as the circle. He knew that Archimedes' formula for the area of a circle, which calls for multiplying the diameter by one-fourth of the circumference, is not considered a solution to the ancient problem of squaring the circle. This is because the problem is to construct the area using compass and straight edge only. And Archimedes did not give a method for constructing a straight line with the same length as the circumference. Goodwin was clearly unaware of this central requirement. He believed that the problem with the Archimedean formula is that it gives wrong numerical results, and that a solution of the ancient problem should consist of replacing it with a correct formula. In the bill he proposed without argument his own method. It has been found that a circular area is to the square on a line equal to the quadrant of the circumference, as the area of an equilateral rectangle is to the square of one side. This appears needlessly convoluted as an equilateral rectangle is by definition a square. In the rest of the bill, however, it is clear that the assertion is simply the area of a circle is the same as that of a square with the same perimeter. For example, right after the above quote, the bill goes on to say the diameter employed as a linear unit according to the present rule in computing the circle's area is entirely wrong, as it represents the circle's area 1 1/5 times the area of the square, whose parameter is equal to the circumference of the circle. In the above model circle above, the Archimedean area accepting Goodwin's values for the circumference and diameter would be 80, whereas Goodwin's proposed rule leads to an area of 64. Now, 80 exceeds 64 by 1/5 of 80, and Goodwin appears to confuse 64 equals 80 times or 1 minus 1/5 times 80. Let's see. 80 times 0.75. With 80 equals 64 times 1 plus. Well, that wouldn't hold true. That wouldn't hold true on the IRS side. Because remember when I told you, imagine, and Denny did too, then on the IRS side, a negative equals an offset, or the positive. So consider this the right side and this the left side on contracts. So it's the same kind of a deal. An approximation that works only for fractions much smaller than 1/5. The area found by Goodwin's rule is pi over 4 times the true area of the circle, which in many accounts of the pi bill is interpreted as a claim that pi equals 4. However, there is no internal evidence in the bill that Goodwin intended to make such a claim. On the contrary, he repeatedly denies that the area of the circle has anything to do with its diameter. The relative area error of 1 minus pi over 4 works out to be 21%, which is much more grave than the approximations of the lengths in the model circle of the previous section. It is unknown what made Goodwin believe that his rule could be correct. In general, figures with identical parameters do not have identical area. Let's see what this is, because I don't know what it is. Let's see right here. And that looks like Saturn. The Saturn rings. And I'll have to look at that more because I'm not like an expert on mathematics, but I got some common sense here, and I can get it. I'm a quick learner. My mother was as a mathematician, a very good mathematician. I'll ask her about it, and she'll tell me because she's my mother. The typical demonstration of this fact is to compare a long, thin shape with a small enclosed area. The area approaching 0 as the width decreases to one of the same parameter that's approximately as tall as its width. The area approaching the square of the width, obviously a much greater area. And then here's 1992 citing an obituary. Mathematical cranks. Ooh, ah, that is an error. The state of Indiana or Iowa or Idaho never passed a law about the value of pi. It never even tried. India would be a good one to go into here because Indiana has that website I told you about, that link that goes right to India. And India's got this dude that was closer than this guy. State of Indiana, Iowa never passed a law about the value of pi. It never even tried to legislate the value of pi. However, the idea that it did is what spread widely, and it is as definitely fixed in the collective mind as it is with the knowledge that in 1492 everyone except Christopher Columbus thought the world was flat. It will probably never be dislodged, but all of us who revere reason have a sacred duty to put error down whenever we can. The battle against falsehood, delusion, and mistaken identities will never be won, but it must continue to be fought. Although the true story of Indiana and pi has been told over and over again, it has not been told often enough to drive the error out. And that is the reason for the telling it one more time. The bill that the Indiana House of Representatives passed was not one setting the value of pi by law. It was one that gave the state the privilege of using the proper value of pi for free. The preamble of House Bill number 246, Indiana State Legislature 1897 is a bill for an act introducing a new mathematical truth and offered as a contribution to education to be used only by the state of Indiana. Free of cost by paying any royalties whatever on the same, provided it accepted by the official action of the legislature in 1897. The proper value of pi for free. That is coming up out of the compass, right, here in Indiana. And that's what Operation Zero that I've been telling you about over in Cambodia when they did Operation Zero and zeroed out all the debt and all that right during the Vietnam War. They took people into the schools and killed them. And I want to say Poontang, but I watched Poontang the other night. So I don't want to say the wrong name, but this dude was taken out of power. Military guy got brought into Cambodia. Then he came back into power, and they just started killing people that didn't comply with whatever they wanted. They zeroed out all that. They did Operation Zero. Jim Jones talked about Operation Zero, although he's not attributed with it. It's his voice talking about Operation Zero. He's from here. He worked with Dan Metrione, and they had people signing false confessions, etc., etc. Now, those false confessions would be for the secret shadow court system, to build the fake identities or to build this fake system they got going on, this shadow system, this virtual reality world that the Python gamers actually developed. This is cool. Cost by paying any royalties. Okay. There was no reason not to pass the bill since there was nothing possible to be lost. Gift horses need not have their mouths inspected. Then as now, legislators were busy people with no time to master all the details of all the bills presented to them, and when the bill contained language like, it is impossible to compute the area of a circle and the diameter as a linear unit without trespassing upon the area outside the circle to the extent of including 1/5 more area than is contained within the circle's circumference, because the square of the diameter produces a side of the square which equals 90 degrees. Even a legislator with some spare time could be excused for spending it on some other piece of pending litigation. The last section of the bill, however, was reassuring. In further proof of the value of the author's proposed contribution and offered as a gift to the state of Indiana is the fact of the solutions of the trisection of the angle. Duplication of the cube and quadrature of the circle having been already accepted as contributions to science by the American Mathematical Monthly. Though the bill was introduced by a legislator from Posey County, its text was no doubt written by E.G., the circle squarer, angle trisector, and cube duplicator. G was being a little devious in his claims in Section 3 of the bill. When G's Quadrature of the Circle was published in 1894 in Volume 1 of the American Mathematical Monthly, it was not an article but part of a queries and information section where all sorts of miscellanea could be found. The quadrature had the subhead published by the request of the author, thus putting it in the category of unpaid advertisement. The editors of the fledgling monthly preferably needed material to fill space and thought that G's piece, G, huh? Hey G, what's up G? Less than 2 pages long, would serve nicely and might provide entertainment for readers. So while G could assert the paper contained his quadrature had appeared in the monthly, when he said that his quadrature had been accepted, and as a contribution to science, he was stretching the truth more than a little. His angle, trisection, and cube duplication appeared in 1895 monthly and were not distinguished to trisect an angle. G said trisect its chord, and to double the volume of a cube increased by its side by 26%. In any event, House Bill 246 seems harmless enough, and it passed with no votes against it. Bills passed by legislators are of interest to newspapers, and a bill whose subject was mathematical would stand out. One Indianapolis daily gave a history. The editor of the journal was not well enough versed in high mathematics to know that G's quadrature was nonsensical, and he was in addition gullible enough to swallow whole all of G must have told him. Of course, no professor of mathematics at Johns Hopkins or University of Michigan had declared that G's quadrature was absolutely perfect. You might wonder how G, a man of probity and standing, could lie through his teeth like that. It could well have been that G did not think he was lying. Cranks finds it easy indeed to believe that they have convinced authorities of their correctness. Here is evidence of that from De Morgan's Budget of Paradoxes. An elderly man came to me to show me how the universe was created. There was one molecule which by vibration became, heaven knows how, the sun. Further vibration produced Mercury, and so on. I suspect the nebular hypothesis had got into the poor man's head by reading in some singular mixture with what it had found there. Some modifications of the vibration gave heat, electricity, etc. I listened until my informant ceased to vibrate, which is always the shortest way, and then said, Our knowledge of electric fluids is imperfect, sir, said he. I see you perceive the truth of what I said, and I will reward your attention by telling you what I seldom disclose. Never accept to those who can receive my theory the little molecule whose vibration have given rise to our solar system is the logos of St. John's Gospel. He went away to Dr. Lardner, who would not go into the solar system at all. The first molecule settled the question. So hard upon poor discoveries are men of science who are not antiquaries in their subject. On leaving, he said, Sir, Mr. De Morgan received me in quite a different way. He heard me attentively, and I left him perfectly satisfied of the truth of my system. I have much reason to think that many discoveries of all classes believe they have convinced everyone who is not peremptory to the verge of incivility. All of G's efforts were in vain. His sad obituary, June 1902, appeared in his local newspaper. End of the man who wanted to benefit the world. Dr. E.J. G. died at his home in Springfield Sunday, aged 77 years. He had been in feeble health for some time, and death came at an end of a long season of illness. Dr. G. was no ordinary man, and those meeting him never failed to be inspired by this fact. He was of distinguished appearance and came from Virginia, where he received an excellent education. He was devoted the last year of his... Did you shut this one off, or did it go off by itself? Went off by itself. All right. The other one, I had turned up too high. It wasn't shutting off. It's not shutting off. Okay, my honey. In vain. He had his obituary said. He wrote a book on his system in the 50s, and the last copyright date was 61. I was able to find only 2 books on the library shelves. A sinister and widespread conspiracy indeed, able simultaneously to prevent libraries from buying books on linear programming and to remove those that had slipped by from their shelves. Are there thousands of agents constantly monitoring nearby libraries? Or are there only a few whose full-time job is to travel and, using forged library cards, check out and never return the dangerous books? Wow. Very good. That would be the librarian's forgery of cards, wouldn't it? Describe the conspirators. The subversive operation just described is controlled by American citizens who are themselves super wealthy in high positions of our government, in high positions of the military, and or in high positions in our national industries. National associations, right? Also included in the operation are people who will do anything for a position of political power or prestige as for a piece of the action. The principal motivation of these people is super wealth at the exclusiveness of all normal human values, and so these people constitute a mental breed or family unto themselves. And number 5, I think, did not realize that people in general are such that no gigantic conspiracy can possibly remain secret, much less succeed. Some people have developed an advanced ability to see conspiracies where there are none. Companies, universities, governments, they lurch from emergency to emergency, buffeted by chance and by things that they cannot control, struggling to keep their heads above water. No one has the time to conspire, even if the ability was there. Of course, B would retort that that is exactly what the conspirators would like everyone to think, and that I am probably in their pay. Would that I were. Would that I were. I could use the extra income. The pamphlet ends with, America, wake up. Big Brother is a computer and its operators, and Big Brother is watching. Very good. And then we can go into the magic squares. I love this book. I'm going to stop there, though, and get into my emails, of which that is not one. And I'm going to shut this down. And okay. This is where there's no name in here, but this is part of that Adobe PDF, where I took it out of an Adobe PDF, put it into here, and see it's going to show 12 here, but that's okay. But I'm going to go right here to look at this. See that 12? Now watch this, though. It won't show it there, which I find interesting, but it will inside the parentheses. 34.5. So I was wrong on the 27, so that's what it actually came out to. So if you take 34.5 minus 12 equals 22.5 is the difference, but it could be at 34.5 as well, the font. So those zeros can be, let's see if I can insert a shape here and show you what I mean about the zeros and the way they manipulate them. And remember, Indiana has got something on the books to change pi, right? And to give it as a gift, and this goes in line. Let's insert a shape. Let's do an oval, which is not really an oval, is it? Huh. I guess that'd be that one where they're manipulating shapes based on points, like the star, the circle and the star thing that Boris has going on. So, because that's a circle, or there's a square inside of a circle, or a circle inside of a square with a star. If you take all those points and fold them inwards, it makes a circle. That's not quite an oval. That's a circle inside a square, right? This is part of their... That's funny. Anyway, you get the gist of it. What we can look at is the Oh, so you can edit points. And that's what I'm talking about on the typeset. So you can basically bend the stars. Let's see if they got a star shape I can put in there. There's a snowflake, there's a moon, there's the sun, there's a star. Edit wrap points. Edit points. I wonder if you, I bet they're bending the stars in their typeset. And that's what the old Masons used to do with their hidden text. Close enough for me. Yeah.
She didn't. For you that are getting over anxious about me dying, out of concern and some out of anxiousness, hoping it'll happen, I've run a high blood pressure since I was. It used to be a hell of a lot higher than that. Marston can tell you when it was one night when, how long was that? 11 years ago when I went into shock. I'm still here, honey. My brain ain't damaged. I got my eye on your ass. That was a hell of a thing to tell him. He don't know the context. Anybody that's in Operation Zero like I am, I want to make preparations. Some people take glory that their move would die when they do. They don't have no goddamn concern except their ego. All I'm concerned about is principle. I want this thing to continue.
The gentleman has expired, and the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, is recognized. Well, before we start the clock on Mr. Pence, let me just indicate the secretary has been here for 3 hours and 20 minutes, not counting the time she had to talk to us in the other room. Generously, I haven't quite seen this yet from a Secretary of State, agreed to stay till 1:30, but at 1:30 this hearing ends. The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, is recognized. Well, before we start the clock on Mr. Pence, let me just indicate the secretary has been here for 3 hours and 20 minutes, not counting the time she had to talk to us in the other room. And she is, I think, very generously, I haven't quite seen this yet from a Secretary of State, agreed to stay till 1:30, but at 1:30 this hearing ends. The gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Pence, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you for coming before this committee.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pence. I'm looking at some old friends from Arkansas over your head. I don't mean to be, interrupted. Don't count this time against Mr. Pence.
All right, the Arkansas time is, we'll give you credit on the other side.
Madam Secretary, I had assumed that warm wave was not directed to me.
Don't assume that, Mr. Pence, please.
Thank you for your service to the country in this post and over many years. I want to raise an issue with you that's come up in this hearing before, and I want to raise it with great respect to you and to the President of the United States of America that you serve. In testimony before this committee earlier, I know that the issue of the President being photographed with the virulent anti-American socialist dictator of Venezuela came up. And I know that according to testimony that was handed to me that you indicated that you found it, quote, rather amusing. But let me say with the deepest respect, Madam Secretary, I am not amused. And I want to speak to that issue and what and get your sense as an American who is both known and respected around the world about the wisdom of the leader of the free world being seen in that kind of a setting with that kind of a socialist dictator. Hugo Chavez is, we all know, a Castro wannabe in the region. He has oppressed the media. He has bullied economic interest in the country. He has blacklisted political opponents from state agencies. There are reports, of which you are well aware, of his lack of cooperation on our efforts to confront narco-terrorism in the region. There are reports of worse by that government. And of course, he has openly supported Iran's nuclear ambitions and has referred to the predecessor of the 44th president as some sort of a demon, which would not be inconsistent with his long history of spewing vile intentions toward the people of the United States of America. You made a comment that I quote with great respect in July of 2007 in another context, I want to admit, in which you said, and I quote, with regard to potential meetings with North Korea, Venezuela, or leaders of Cuba, you said, quote, I will not promise to meet with the leaders of these countries during my first year because you said, and I quote with much agreement, I don't want to be used for propaganda purposes. And so my question, Madam Secretary, is, in light of your previously stated insight, isn't it true that having the President of the United States be seen on the world stage warmly greeting a virulent anti-American socialist dictator, that intentionally or unintentionally our President was used for propaganda purposes, to borrow the phrase that you used? And isn't it also true that, as Natan Sharansky observed memorably in his book, Case for Democracy, there's almost nothing more demoralizing to people that are fighting for freedom in their own country than to see the leader of the free world in friendly association with the very people that are oppressing them. Sharansky said we could, quote, never fully prepare ourselves for the disappointment that came from seeing the free world abandon its own values in that context. And so, in a very real sense, I wanted to invite, in a respectful way, your thoughts about that, recognizing that you serve this president, but also expressing to you my profound concern that this administration allowed itself, intentionally or unintentionally, to be used to prop up and promote the image and the interest of a virulent anti-American, a socialist dictator in Venezuela.
I'm going to give the Secretary a little bit of time to, because you characterized an earlier comment that she made, to respond.
Thank you, Chairman.
Well, Mr. Pence, I have lived a long time now. I grew up at the height of the Cold War when we were on the hair trigger alert of nuclear war. I remember virulent anti-American communist dictators threatening our country on a regular basis. And I remember our presidents meeting with them, shaking their hands, and negotiating. They did not do so without conditions or without strong principles, but they did so. I've also seen us establish normal relations with Vietnam. I have seen the 30 years of normalized relations with China, and I don't think there is any contradiction between standing strongly for our principles and our values and pursuing the give and take of diplomatic encounter and negotiation where appropriate. I think that your strong feelings about Hugo Chavez are certainly understood, because he has clearly been someone who has behaved in ways that don't accord with our values and our principles. But so were the Soviet leaders, and so did so many others with whom we eventually created an environment in which we could see some changes that benefited the United States of America. That is my bottom line, Mr. Pence. My bottom line is I am here to serve my country, which I have loved ever since I was a little girl. And I'm going to support my president because he is committed to doing whatever he can in the time he is given to serve to make this a better, safer, more secure world. There are different approaches. I respectfully say we spent 8 years trying to isolate Chavez, and what has been the result? I don't think it's been in America's interests. So we're going to try some different things, and I respect your disagreement. We want as bipartisan a foreign policy as possible, and we have, wherever we can, reached out, and will continue to do so to members of this committee and others. We want your constructive criticism. We want your feedback. But President Obama won the election. He beat me in a primary in which he put forth a different approach. And he is now our president, and we all want our president, no matter of which party, to succeed, especially in such a perilous time. So I appreciate your strong feelings, but I think that we are pursuing a course that may very well open up some additional opportunities that we hope will be in our interests and advance our values and protect our security.
Thank you. The time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California, Mr. Costa, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for this important hearing.